All right. Hey, welcome back, you guys. Week 2 of Ansell's Cooking Club. It looks like we're doing pizza today. I got a funny story to share with you guys first. About an hour and a half ago, my computer completely broke. Um, so we're doing kind of a different setup than we did last week. So bear with us with little technical issues, but we think we have it all settled. So that was good times. Also, we have a special guest this week. You guys know him as Mr. Dickerson, Jeremy Dickerson. You want to say hi, Jeremy?
Hey, everybody. Glad to be here.
All right. So Jeremy's wanting to know how to make pizza, and he's going to be sort of my special guest of the day, asking me questions, clarifying what I'm talking about. He might just jump in and interrupt me at any time. So he's sort of the in-studio representative in his own studio. So, you've been over here before when I made pizza. What did it seem intimidating to you, or does it seem like something people can do?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things about pizza. I never make it at home. I always buy it out. And there's like 3 in the neighborhood that I always go to. And the things that are intimidating to me about it are dealing with the dough. Anything that requires dough intimidates me. So any tips around dough? And then I want to know how to make a decent pizza sauce from scrap. And I never feel like I have that confidence. So I'm always chickening out and buying one that's already pre-made and then feeling disappointed.
All right, so the dough and the sauce, pretty much all of it. We'll definitely cover that. We'll definitely cover those. So let's get started. Like I was talking about last week, when I'm starting cooking, I have to think of what's going to take the longest, and then start sort of working backwards from there. So the thing that's going to take the longest here, or at least the first place that we should start on, is getting some toppings going. And we're going to be cooking this pizza at 550 degrees, which is the highest my oven went to. If my oven went to 700, we'd cook it at 700. Maybe later on, in a year or something, I'll get a video of my outdoor pizza oven that I'm starting to build, and that will go up to 700. So today,
why such high temperatures?
That's really high temperature. And actually, the temperature of the oven is what kind of defines the pizza. Like the New York style pizza, they didn't have wood when they moved to New York. They had coal, and so coal fires at about 900 degrees. And so the coal-fired ovens are really, really hot, and because of that, they're really thin, super, super thin crust. And then the lower the temperature you go, the sort of thicker the crust gets because you're cooking it slower. That said, we're going to cook it really, really fast. And so the ingredients that we're putting in it need to be cooked ahead of time. So we're going to cook our toppings today are going to be, we're going to make 2 different pizzas. We're going to have just a cheese, a margarita pizza, which is just cheese, basil, and soft tomatoes. And then we're going to do another one with mushrooms, olives, and onions. And so I need to cook a lot of the excess water out of the onions and mushrooms. So I'm going to start with onion. This should look very familiar to last week. I'm going to cut the ends off. Try to keep my cutting board as clean as I can as I go. You drop your onion in the sink, just give it a quick wash. Things happen, folks. So
is the idea to get rid of the moisture so it doesn't mess with the dough?
Yeah, right. So when you're cooking the dough, well, it's 2 things. It cooks so quickly that you'll end up with just raw onion. It doesn't have time to actually cook. And then the other part is it will make the dough soggy and will keep it from getting crisp. So I got the peel off my onion. Last week, we were cutting our onion this way, which would totally be a fine way to go. But for whatever reason, for hamburgers and for pizza, I like to slice them the opposite way. So not from end to end, but around the circumference. So that's the way we're going to do it. And again, on how to hold a knife, we don't hold it by the handle. We pinch it right where the handle meets the blade, and then we wrap our 3 remaining fingers around the blade. It gives you the nice, secure way to hold it, and it's just an extension of your hand. So here we go. I'm gonna make fairly thick slices. And the reason why I'm doing thick slices is because I want them to caramelize and not burn. And if I did thinner slices, they would burn before they caramelize. And if I did too thick of a slice, they would just never finish.
How do you define the distinction between caramelizing and burning?
Burning. So I'm looking for like brown and not black.
Mm-hmm. What does that do to the flavor?
Brings out the sweetness in the onion. The onion has a lot of sugar in it if you cook it and get that sugar to develop. So I got my pan going. I pretty much only always cook with my pan on high. You could do olive oil with the pizza. I'm going to switch it up and do butter. And the reason why I'm doing butter is because I just feel like caramelized onions and mushrooms go so much better with butter than olive oil. So even though olive oil might be traditional with like a pizza, butter tastes better. So I got some butter going in the pan. And I just want to wait for my pan to get really hot before I stick anything in. So today we don't have the overhead view of the pan, which is sad. That's part of my computer dying mishap. But I'll tilt the pan a little bit so you can see it. Butter's starting to sparkle, so I'm going to throw the onions in. Again, for 2 pizzas, I'm doing about half of an onion. It might be a little bit more than I need, but I'd rather have a little bit more than not enough. And I'll get going on the mushrooms also.
What are your rules for cleaning mushrooms before you cook with them?
Brush off as much of the visible dirt as you can, and then throw them in the pan. If I was in a restaurant, I would wash them off, wash them really good. But I'm in my own house, and I can get away with just brushing them off.
Do you trim the stems at all, or just put them in whole?
I just put them in. If there's like a stem that's like covered in dirt or looks pretty funky, I'll not put it in. But I think the goal of this exercise right here is to remove as much of the water as I can. And so washing them just adds more water to the situation. Okay, so those are going to cook for a second. We're going to get going on our sauce. We're using the gold standard is canned marzano tomatoes from Italy, and we're using New Season's version of authentic Italian tomatoes. And you want to use whole tomatoes and not crushed or diced or whatever else. And the reason for that is that if you buy a can of like crushed tomatoes, you don't know what you're getting. You're getting like the leftover bad ends from the factory. Does that make sense? If you buy whole tomatoes, you know you're getting a whole tomato. You're not just getting like the stems. Like there's no doubt in my mind as I open this that this right here is a tomato. But if I had a bunch of like crushed tomatoes, it could be whatever. It's whatever they say it is. So always buy whole tomatoes and then turn them into whatever you need. So if we wanted to crush these, we could crush them. If we wanted to dice them, we could dice them. I think what we're going to do today is strain them because, again, we're trying to get rid of all of the liquid that we can. So it comes with a bunch of sauce. You could strain this into a bowl and keep the sauce for something else. But I'm just putting it in a strainer. This is sort of off camera and you can't see it, but you'll see the end product. And I'm mushing them up with my hands just to get all the juice that's on the inside and everything. That's just going to ruin my pizza, so I want to get it out and just get the pulp.
Could you use all that for a marinara tomorrow?
Yeah, you could definitely keep this and add it to whatever you want tomorrow. But for the purposes of today, I'm just discarding it, which is sort of sad. It'd be much better to keep it and do something with it. Months, but apparently while I'm cooking and talking at the same time, it's a bad recipe for this smoke detector. My onions look like they need a little bit more oil and butter, so I'm going to put them in.
Are there any rules for temperatures cooking with butter? I've always kind of tried to use it at a lower temperature and then oils at higher temperatures.
It has a lower smoke point, yeah. Right now, though, my pan's on really, really low. I'm just trying to save it from setting off the alarm. I think it's pretty negligible. Cooking on high has never been an issue with me with butter. Okay, so with our tomatoes, this is going to be a really simple recipe, and you're gonna think I'm crazy for how simple this recipe is. But I think the key in Italian cooking is definitely less is more. So you want a couple ingredients, and you want to allow them to just shine and be on their own. And I think people confuse pizza sauce with like spaghetti sauce, and they're not the same thing.
What lines would you distinguish between them? Because I've always been frustrated with making too complex of a spaghetti sauce or even a pizza sauce, and just like sticking to the less is more principle has been hard for me.
Well, you're going to see. So in a pizza sauce, I think you really only need tomatoes and maybe tomatoes and garlic and really nothing else. So I'm putting garlic in. This is raw garlic. And I'm not cooking it. I mean, the tomatoes are already cooked because they came out of a can and part of the canning process cooks them. But a couple cloves of garlic. And I'm not putting any herbs in because I'm going to put fresh herb on the pizza at the end. So I really just want, the minimal in there. We'll probably do one more garlic. To peel the garlic, I put it on the plate on the cutting board and I mash it. And then when I get done with that, the outer peel comes right off. Hopefully people know that trick already.
Do you mince it or run it through a?
Well, good question. I'm going to blend it right now in the can. This a couple of times. So there we go.
So that's just the garlic and the tomato solids?
Yeah, that's just garlic and tomato sauce and nothing else. Because everything else that I would normally put in, I'm going to put in fresh later. Okay, so that's our sauce. It's done. It's just tomato solid and garlic. Pretty challenging.
So this is something we often disagreed about when making lunch in the makerspace. What when and what role does salt play in this?
So, my wife, as I've talked about in the past, does not like salt very much. So, the salt is coming from the Kalamata olives, which are really salty. I'm going to put on Romano cheese, which is really salty. And if I wanted to, I could put some salt in the sauce as well, which I'll probably put just a tiny little bit in there. But a little pinch of salt in the sauce, a little bit of salt in the toppings. But I guess it just really depends on, you have to know what your toppings are. So if you're doing like prosciutto and sausage and a bunch of other things that are like really salty, you don't want to put as much salt in the sauce. That said, I know you personally like salt quite a bit. I guess the thing about salt is you can always put more on later, or you can put something salty on later with like cheese.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to pull salt out of something that has too much in it.
Yeah, you can't untoast the toast.
No. Thanks, Sid, the science kid. Okay, so I think we're actually kind of ready to start assembling. Well, I guess no. I need to cut up a couple olives. So I have these pitted Kalamata olives. I'm just going to quickly rough chop a few of them up.
How do you do that without cutting your finger?
I'm holding my hands like this. So my fingers are, you don't want to hold like this.
Get it down on the screen. It's a little out of the screen.
Oh, here we go. So if I was holding the thing I'm chopping like this, I would cut my fingers. But I'm instead holding it like this and then running the blade around the back of my knuckles.
Okay.
And you can go slower, like you can do. And then over time, you'll pick up speed. I've been doing this a long time, and I can go fairly fast. Okay, so we have a rough chop on a bunch of our olives. And we're also going to rough chop the cheese, and then we're going to start making a pizza. So I buy this fresh mozzarella in a ball. It comes in juice. This is the best way to get your mozzarella. Your store probably carries it. You just need to look for it. So I'm going to get two of these out. I'm going to dump the juice out, which I think is just whey. I don't think it's liquid. I don't think it's water. I think it's whey. Like whey. Curds in the whey. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to just rough chop the mozzarella. I don't care what it looks like because it's going to melt all over the place. It's just as thin as I can get it. Off we go. Maybe you get halfway done like this and you flip it on its side just to give you a more stable platform. Because looks really, truly don't matter on your mozzarella. And then I pour it back in my storage container just to keep my cutting board cleaned out.
So why the fresh mozzarella and not like the more American style that you would grate?
This melts way better, has a milder flavor. The American style is like really, really heavily salted. This just has a mild, delicate flavor that allows all of the rest of the ingredients on the pizza to shine through. So we're trying to let the stars of the show be the stars. Okay, we're gonna start working with the pizza, with the dough. So here's the thing about the dough. One, you got to take off all your rings. So I have all my rings off. I did that before the show started. Put your rings somewhere safe. Two, take a deep breath. This is not going to like hurt you. If you mess it up, it's still going to taste good. And three, your first time you do this, you're going to mess it up. So earlier in the day, about 2 hours ago, when my computer broke, I was preparing the dough. I think we're going to show a video of that at the end of how I prepared the dough. But right now we have dough that's all ready to go. It's in these nice little balls. We have two of them. It's all wrinkly on one edge, on the bottom edge, and it's nice and taut on the top edge. And the top edge is going to end up being the bottom of our pizza. Does that make sense?
So the one that's been exposed to the air?
Yeah, it's been exposed to the air and it has a little bit of a skin on it.
Uh-huh.
So that's going to be, and it's frictionless.
Yeah, it's less tacky.
It's less tacky and it's a smooth surface, whereas this is like, has ridges and bumps.
So in terms of like moisture content, when you touch the underside, should it like be sticking to your skin, or like how would you judge?
It's really sticky. But then I as quickly as I can, I get it down. I have a bowl full of flour here, just a small amount of flour, like a third of a cup of flour in the whole bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And I put all sides and the edges in the flour so that I can work with it now.
Nice.
Okay, and so what I'm going to do is start off by just sort of stretching it. And I pull it and twist it, and pull it and twist it, pull it and twist it. And I don't know if you guys can see this, but it's just slowly becoming a disc. And I don't want to pull it to where it tears. I want to pull it until it feels like it's about to tear, and you'll know what that feels like through trial and error. And then I don't want to go any further. And I see it's starting to get a little bit sticky, so it's okay on your first couple times. Just add some extra flour. Like, it's much better to end up with a little bit too much flour in your dough than to end up with dough that's all torn and you're frustrated.
Is the gluten part of what's holding it together?
The gluten is what's holding it together. So now what I'm doing is the next step. And it's going to be hard to describe this, but what I'm doing is I have my hands like this, and the dough's resting over my hands, and I'm using my knuckles to pull it apart from underneath. Does that make sense? Pulling it out. So that's what's going on underneath here. So I pull it apart, and then I rotate it. And I pull it with my knuckles and rotate.
All that stuff in the movies and cartoons of people like throwing it in the air.
Oh, those are people that have been doing this. Like, if I start making pizzas where I'm making like 8 or 10 a day, then I can do it. Like, if I have a pizza oven, I start throwing them in the air. But we don't need to throw it in the air. But we also don't want to roll it. Like, we're not getting a rolling pin.
Why not?
Because that will squish all the air bubbles out. And you can see it's already forming like really nice air bubbles everywhere.
Okay.
So I did the knuckles for a while, and the knuckles were getting the inside of the dough stretched out, but now the outside of the dough is thick. And so now I'm just running it through my fingers, and it's naturally just stretching out. So now we have a dough ball that's probably about 1.5 feet in diameter. And I need to start looking for places where it's thin and places where it's thick because it's getting close to the size. So I have a hole about to form where it's just paper thin. And I want to make sure that that doesn't turn into a hole while I'm going and looking for places where it's a little too thick. And I'm just touching the places where it's a little thicker than. And you will for sure mess this up the first few times you do it.
This is definitely the part that's most intimidating to me. I want that already done and just to put the sauce on top.
So this is getting close. Normally I use on my peel, I use semolina flour, but they were, it's a pandemic and they were out of semolina flour. And so I'm using, there's no good place to do this.
Something cornmeal?
Cornmeal. And I've never used cornmeal before, but when in a pandemic,
Yeah.
make it happen.
Maybe polenta next week.
I can already tell I don't like this, but maybe I'll just use a little bit more than I normally use. But I'm putting a bunch of cornmeal all over.
And why that instead of just regular flour?
Well, regular flour, for one, it doesn't work quite as well. It will still stick to the peel usually. And then when you bite into it, it's like raw flour on your tongue later on when you're eating it. And, no one wants a mouthful of raw flour. That's gross. Okay, so I'm gonna put this down. And when you put it down, it sort of collapses in on itself. So I'm just gonna stretch it out a little bit. That's Taryn, our producer. So I pour a little bit of sauce in the middle, and then I'm just using the backside of the spoon to spread it out. And you don't want, right now, the dough is evenly spread. So what I mean is I didn't leave the crust thicker than the rest of it. The crust will form because there's no sauce on it. So you just want to spread the sauce out and leave a little bit around the edge where there's no sauce, and that will turn into your crust. I see people put like a really thick ring around the outside, and you don't want that. You want uniformly thin everywhere. So here we go. We got to work fast now. So I'm going to grab some of these mushrooms and onions, spread them out on the pizza. And then I get some cheese, about half of this cheese. I guess maybe some olives first. So we'll go ahead and put the cheese on. You'd be surprised how much this melts. So you want it spread out pretty good, or else you're just going to have a big glob of mess. Okay, so that's all ready to go in the oven. Again, the oven is 550, and I'm putting it on a stone in the oven. I want to give it a little shake just to make sure it's not stuck to the bottom. You can deal with it if it's stuck to the bottom now, but you can't deal with it once you open the oven. Okay, so we got the first pizza in the oven. There's a couple things we need to do real quick before that comes out of the oven. We're going to get some garlic butter going. So for the garlic butter, I'm just going to put a little bit of butter in and a little bit of garlic in. Same method as before.
I'm just observing the fine technique. I know this is kind of a tense time with that. What are any suggestions for people that don't have a pizza oven? Are there any hacks for how we could do this on something other than that? Maybe in a cast iron skillet or?
Yeah, so a pizza stone costs, $15, which is less than the cost of a pizza at the store. So go buy a stone. Here's the thing: is that the dough that I bought today was $4, and the stone is like you can get one for 15 online somewhere. So you're still into it. It pays for itself in the very first time you use it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna just give this a really rough chop because we're in a hurry. And this is gonna go in our cup. Shout out to my dad; he made this cup. It's one of my favorite cups. And I'm gonna put it in the microwave for like 30 seconds. So now, what would be a good thing is let's play the video that I made earlier of me doing the dough, and you can kind of see how I took a packaged dough and turned it into those dough balls. And when we come back from that video, I'll be trying to take the pizza out of the oven. Okay, so there's a couple things we're going to put on the pizza when it's complete, when it comes out of the oven. We're going to put some fresh basil on. If we would have put the basil in the oven beforehand, the basil would just wilt like really rapidly at 550 degrees. So I'm going to get a couple sprigs of basil. A little goes a long ways. If you roll them all up, if you stack them all on top of each other, and then roll them up like I guess like a tobacco leaf. This is how they roll cigars. Not that I've ever rolled cigars or even smoked a cigar, but here we go. We roll it all up. I don't know if people believe me when I say that, but I definitely haven't. Roll it all up like that. And then we're just going to make really fine slices through here. Ta-da!
It's magic.
Magic. I just did that, believe it or not. So it's really
Nice.
fine. I think they call that chiffon or something similar to that. I don't know. So when it comes out of the oven, we're going to put that on. We're going to put on some cheese. We're going to put on our garlic butter that just came out of the microwave. And then we're going to serve it. And I could start making the next pizza dough right now, but the reason why you don't want to do that is because the stone actually needs a little bit of time to rebound. So it's best just to make one at a time, relax, chill. Don't stress yourself. Here we go.
It's really similar to coffee. When you're roasting, you have to let the machine kind of rebound from dumping a room temperature batch of an ingredient into a really hot environment. It cools the environment down quite a bit.
So can we see do we have a view of what the pizza looks like?
Yeah. Looks like
Yeah. Dinner. Okay, so I'm going to take, this is the secret sauce here. Actually, we'll start with the Parmesan because it needs to melt. So pretty generous helping of Parmesan. And again, that's because I don't hardly salt prior to this. And then we're going to put some butter around the edge. I don't know which one of the crappy pizza chains invented putting butter around the edge, but they did it right. So I'm just slopping the butter on. And then last but not least, we'll take some of this basil, sprinkle it over the top. You want your basil thin enough that your kids don't pick it off.
My son calls these pesto pizza because he knows that there's basil in pesto.
All right, so that's what we got. That pizza's done. If you feel like you got it, that's probably enough of the video for you. But if you'd like to stick around, I'm going to make one more, and you'll get a better feel for how I do it. And then at the end, I'll cut into that pizza.
Visually, how do you know when to take it out of the oven? What are you looking for?
I'm looking for, so I'll pull this back out. It's golden brown everywhere. And it has one or two spots that are like starting to get darker than golden brown. And the cheese on top was starting to turn a little bit golden brown in places also. So it was starting to caramelize. So that's what we're looking for. That pizza is done. And it's going to be delicious. Okay, dough number 2. Second verse, same as the first. You can see right now when I first pull it out, it's like it sticks to my fingers. Dough on both sides, spin it around. Dough on the edges. Flour, sorry. Stretch it, pull it. Might add a little more flour to it. So it looks like we've had a couple technical issues, and again, we're working on a crazy setup. Really sorry about that, you guys. Hopefully by next week we have it sorted out, or this is our last video. We'll see how it goes.
It was a short season.
So I just go back and forth between like finding the thin spots. So right now the outside is thicker than the inside. So I'm working the outside. But as it starts to get thin, I'll go back and work the inside. So the outside technique, again, is just passing it through my fingers like so. And it just thins out magically for you. And then the inside technique, as now the outside's getting a little too thin. Just a little bit more. So now the inside technique again is just passing it on my knuckles. And right there, fortunate for you guys, not fortunate for me, it tore. So here's how you deal with a tear. First, we get some of the flour back on our board. And then get the dough out on the board. And we can just pinch that tear back together. And hope it goes.
Will that stick to the pizza stone if it doesn't come back together?
Yeah, sauce will pour through it. Wow, I haven't torn a dough in like 2 or 3 years.
This is really good timing.
Yeah.
Every viewer is going to tear it the first time, so this is a good repair technique.
Yeah, so do it on the board. Do not try and repair it not on the board. And once it tears, like I would ideally like to stretch that out a little bit more, but it's torn, and so I just need to live with it and proceed. So it's maybe 90% the size of the other one, but there's nothing I can do at this point. It would be foolish to try and keep going and spreading out the edges. So slightly thicker crust is way better than no crust at all, which is what I will have if I keep going. I also want to be kind of delicate around the actual tear there as I'm spreading the sauce out. Okay, this one is going to go to the kids, and I know that my kids don't like olives, so I'm leaving the olives off. But they're okay with onions and mushrooms when they've been caramelized, so we're going to put those on. Get the cheese. Usually, one package of cheese, which is 2 balls, is slightly more than enough for 2 pizzas. So I'll usually have like, an ounce of cheese left over at the end. So I'm not trying to use up all the cheese because it's just too much.
Make a little caprese in.
Yeah, or just shove it in my mouth here for a second. Okay, and then that's ready to go in the oven.
This is giving it time to rebound.
Yeah, it's fine. This one interesting thing here about the cornmeal that I'm using instead of what I wanted to use is that it's really made a mess in the oven. So I'm just going to scrape the oven real quick. Sometimes you just gotta, improvise a little bit. It'll be fine. All right. So, is there any questions from the home audience? Is there a home audience? Doesn't look like we have any questions. Well, what do you think? Are you going to make pizza sometime?
I'm still intimidated by the dough, but yeah.
It's like you have to go into it knowing that you're gonna ruin one.
Right.
And even ruined, like that last one I'm gonna call ruined, is still gonna get eaten. I'm still still gonna taste better than store bought.
I'm in the kitchen. I tend to be the kind of person who's like a real self-flagellator. Like I want to be able to make everything from scratch. But it sounds like you got this dough as a pre-made one and then just modified it a little bit.
Yeah, because they're out of like flour and yeast at the store. Like that's a really hard commodity to get right now is flour and yeast. So like, if that doesn't exist and you still want sort of homemade pizza, you kind of have to go with it. I'm gonna make a quick.
What are some local? Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
What are some local places that have generally pretty good pizza dough stock?
Zupan's, New Seasons, Fred Meyer's all carry it.
Nice.
Zupan's is by far the best. So I'm gonna make a really quick little vinaigrette. I'm putting some balsamic vinegar. I'm going to put in some olive oil if I can find it. You want like a 2-to-1, 2 parts vinegar, 1 part olive oil. I'm going to put in a little bit of my fresh basil. I'm going to put in some Parmesan cheese, or I guess in this case Romano cheese. I'm going to put in some lemon juice. If I squeeze it this way up, I can catch the seeds before they fall out.
It's a cool technique.
Yeah, the juice runs through the fingers and hopefully the seeds don't.
Yeah, genius.
And then a little bit of pepper. Although I don't know if I can find my pepper mill. My oven doesn't cook evenly. The back cooks faster than the front. So I have to rotate the pizza. So I'm just going to give it a quick rotate.
Do you think it's worth people figuring out how to calibrate the temperature on their oven, or just like go to the max and turn it up as high as it goes for pizza?
Yeah, just turn it up as high as it goes. I mean, I could have spent forever calibrating that, but the fix was a 30-second rotate of the pizza. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, like a 2-second rotate. Okay, so when you get your vinaigrette, and I'm just going to give this one last stir with a fork. The way you want to toss this is put it in the bowl. Whoa, sorry. Rub it around the edge of the bowl. And then put your salad greens in. So in this case, I'm doing baby arugula. And then I just, it's like I'm using the greens to wipe down the edge of the bowl.
So you don't have to emulsify it ahead of time with a blender or a whisk or anything?
No. But you also, what I'm saying is you don't want to pour it over it because it gets too much dressing goes on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the way I'm going to finish this pizza, this is my first pizza from earlier. I'm going to top it with a little bit of arugula.
Why arugula and not spinach or some other green?
I like the bitterness of arugula. Spinach is a little bit bland. And I also honestly like the way it looks. So I think things need to look appealing, look appetizing. So that's done. Let's see about getting this one out of the oven. You get it out of the oven. Same as before, a little Parmesan cheese on top. You can see this one's quite a bit thicker, and that's because I just had to stop stretching it. You know, it is what it is. The kids will eat it. My 2-year-old likes the arugula, but my 9-year-old doesn't. So I'm just going to give him some arugula on the side. And that's it. Thanks for joining us. Week 2 pizza. You'll have to put in the comments what you want to see week 3 if the show goes on. And thanks for joining me. It's been a lot of fun. This is the Ansell's Cooking Club.